to Arbory Digital Experiences. This is episode 15, and today we're going to be talking about the definition of what AEM Edge Delivery is, how it differs from AEM as a cloud service, other versions of AEM, and also things that you might want to know if you're considering moving from another content management system, such as WordPress, Drupal, anything else like that. Today, I'm joined by Brandon, who is a relatively new solution consultant for Arbory Digital. Hey there, Brandon. Welcome to our show.
All right. Yeah, thanks for doing this with me, Ted. This is going to be super helpful coming from 20 years in the brains and more of a managerial and leadership background. Starting to learn the background of the tech world and everything that goes on behind the scenes that all the rest of us customers see. So this is going to be super helpful.
Yep. The thing is about this space is that most of the time when you get into a certain system that runs your website, you're into that system, and it's unusual for anybody, even a pro in this space, to know even an adjacent system. So it's always okay for somebody to need to ask questions about. It's okay. So all right, listen. What is this thing? What is it even about? How do you? How does it differ from something else? You're using a bunch of words and abbreviations as if they're English, which clearly they're not. So, yeah. So fire at will, and
no one can know everything.
No one can know everything, especially in this space. But hang on. So you're traveling right now. Where are you physically right now?
Right now we are in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. My family and I are from Pennsylvania, but we had been in North Carolina and Virginia for 20 years. So when I hung up my boots and retired, we saw it as an opportunity to take a gap year as a family. And so I'm working from the road. My wife is working from the road. We're road schooling our two sons as we travel around, and just really taking the time before we planted roots back in Pennsylvania, to see as much of the country as we could.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I bet your kids are digging this.
Yeah. They get homesick every once in a while, but for the most part, they've been outstanding and been having a good time.
Oh yeah, nothing like it. Well, cool. Let's dive into this. So I'm here to answer your questions on this here too. So fire at will. And where do you want to get started with this bit?
Yeah. So I've learned a little bit of what AEM is. My rudimentary understanding is that it defines and maintains websites. Like everything we see as customers that big companies run, that's all. If the company is using AEM, that's all produced in the AEM content management system. But I understand that Edge Delivery is coming out now, and the cloud has been around for a while, but there's still a ton of data saved on servers all over the world. But now everything is moving to the cloud, and we're talking massive amounts of data and performance improvements that come with that. So I started to get a grasp of what AEM is, but now how does Edge Delivery change content management?
Sure. Good. Great. That's a great place to start. Okay. So first of all, so AEM is AEM, short for Adobe Experience Manager. It's a product that has been around for quite some time, but the product itself has changed over the years. It's a suite of tools that are there to be able to manage large websites, manage all the content problems and content use cases that you've got of all kinds of different data that goes onto a website. Whether you're talking about documents, you're talking about pages, images, video, various experiences that a company may need to be able to produce. You need locators. You have sets of images. You have slideshows. You have translated documents. You have pricing, ability to buy something. There's all kinds of things that go into what do you want available, and also where do you want it available? Do you want it available on a mobile phone? Do you want it to be available, same data inside of an app, different data coming out of an app? These are all big kid problems that when you first start out and you've got a small business, then you don't necessarily have those problems. You've got smaller problems. You have the very basic problem of like, let's have an about us page. How about, or let's just write a product brief of what we do or something like that. And does it need to be in 8 languages? It does not. Does it need to be a different for new versus returning visitors? No, it does not. It just need the basic stuff. So that's where, for a beginning website, or for just a small business, a local business or something like that, then a Drupal or a WordPress might suffice. But as soon as you start to have larger problems, more complicated problems, you need a piece of software that is able to go and solve for those. And then, and then once you've solved those problems, how do you get it to solve it at an acceptable speed? That's another thing too, is because sometimes a piece of software might solve it. And like, can you do this? Well, yes, you can do this, but maybe your page load time is 10 seconds a pop or something like that. Or you can't update anything on the website, or else the website's going to go down. And those are the bigger problems that then require,
Well, and I feel like that's such a significant factor for content design and content management and web design is how fast does it get to the customer? Because I think people are running out of patience for slow loading sites, and that simple factor could drive customers away from a company if their site literally isn't up to speed in 2024.
Totally. And so that was a core tenet, really, that the Adobe folks had when designing, like, basically some of these mad scientists that created AEM in the first place, all the way back in the early 2000s, the early aughts. This is where it's kind of came out of. And they're like, okay, well, if we were going to do this again, if we were going to make a world-beating content management system, but we're going to design it now, and we have all the resources that we have the talent that we have, what would it be? Well, one of those things is it wouldn't just be acceptable in terms of speed. It should be the fastest. You should be able to, if you are a major brand, you shouldn't have to settle for, well, we're having to solve all these problems, so that somehow justifies we've got a sluggish site, but look at all the things that it does, right? No, it should actually, it should do all those things, and it should also be the fastest site on the internet. And so that's one of the core things that Edge Delivery can bring to the table. The other piece of this is, though, and this is one of these things that seems like a paradox, seems like two things that cannot exist at the same time, is it should be able to do all those things, but it also shouldn't be a royal pain to develop on. And that's one thing that has made, well, it's been like, I make my living on Adobe Experience Manager, but at the same time, I know that one of the pain points is that it's a very expensive platform to develop on.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of very specialized talent. It takes people who have been in the business for a really long time. These are not bottom of the line resources that you have working on an AEM site. And as a result of that, sometimes choosing to make the jump of, like, let's say you've got a smaller business where you're used to, like, when somebody says, let's do a website redesign, and they're used to that being like a, $1,200 line item or something like that. And you say, well, good. Well, what about this? Well, how much is a brand new implementation? And then somebody says, well, it's, $500,000. And you're like, I'm not that big. Yeah. So I guess so when you have something that does so many things, how can you make it be done by people who maybe don't have 15 years of experience in this and are the highest end architects possible? How can you, but still get an acceptable result? Not even an acceptable result, a high speed, capable result that is maintainable. So this is one of these things that's like, you can't, how are you supposed to have all those things at the same time?
Yeah, but that's where next gen AEM is going, right? It's actually solving all those problems, speed being the first one for Edge Delivery, right? So how do they do that?
So, okay, so I guess I could start by kind of defining what Edge Delivery is. So this set of technologies that was developed at Adobe it is a set of technologies that allows for pages to be composited, designed, and created basically in the basis of documents, like as opposed to having everything ground into one big database, in the same ilk as like a WordPress, right? Where everything's coming out of MySQL kind of a thing. Or if you've got AEM where everything's kind of ground into, you've got this big thing called a Java content repository, which is what everything was in, or is in traditional Adobe Experience Manager. Instead of that, your source of documents for the website is literal documents. In many cases, it has the ability to author things in Google Docs, in SharePoint, in Markdown, in simple HTML, and so forth. So these allow people to use tools that they're super familiar with already. Like anybody knows how to author something in Microsoft Word. So if you say, okay, good, here's how you set up a document for pages in Word. It's got a title. If you want a table, how about dragging a table? There's a table there. You want a picture? Put a picture on there. It is a lot simpler to get people up to speed with this. It sounds simplistic. It sounds, it almost sounds dorky. Like, hold on, you're gonna author a website with Microsoft Word? Like, I said no to that in 1998.
Right.
with
But now here we are,
and it's happening.
and that's the
So,
process.
and but because of the way that Edge Delivery sites are created, the documents are created in a very simple user interface that allows people to author them and use them, non-technical folks or marketers alike, to be able to use the features, these powerful features they need to be able to use. And it's separated entirely from the styling and the presentation and the interaction, which is done in very simple CSS and JavaScript. And it's commodity CSS and JavaScript, which makes it really accessible for people who don't have a ton of AEM experience. And that then gets pushed into a set of Edge, like an Edge content delivery pipeline, which composites that into stuff that is pushed out as far as possible to the user, so that it can be retrieved and served in such a way that it is as fast as it very possibly can be.
Yeah. So yeah, we were talking about that the other day, and I like the analogy that you used for what it means to have the content as close as possible to the customer. It started to make a little sense in a digital sense, but I'm an analogies guy, and so when you used the Five Guys analogy, suddenly it all became clear that, hey, they come up with fresh ingredients. They don't freeze any of their ingredients, and the only way to do that is to source the ingredients from nearby to the actual store.
Yep.
And so that's a pretty significant factor in the Five Guys analogy. Like for a restaurant, that's their marketing, that's customer preference. Like, I want to eat fresh ingredients, even if it is a cheeseburger. Uh, it's it's a better and fresher cheeseburger than
Right. Or I want a really good one. And I'm not willing to wait 45 minutes at a store for, or at a really nice fancy restaurant for that. And I just won't have that thing. And so it's one of these things where if you push that as far to the end user as you possibly can, so that when he's retrieving it, no matter where he is, he's got a fast experience. And that's the whole idea of Edge Delivery.
in the digital sense. That's exactly where we're at with Edge Delivery now, and that's what the cloud offers, is pushing all that data as close to the customer as possible.
Right. And that's, I guess, where you get into some of the differences between what the traditional AEM is, and really also how this differs from, so AEM is similar in a lot of ways to other competing offerings. It's like if you look at something like your Optimizely's or Sitecore or something like that, a lot of the ones that are similar to AEM are also have a big, heavy set of technologies they're in servers. They're either located in the cloud or located at a customer data center. But in either case, these are big servers that require a whole bunch of expertise and so forth to run. And then if you're either running them or you're not, it's not particularly like composable. You can't say, well, I would like this one, and I would like one of these, and please give me one of those too. And if you stick that together, then that's the solution that I would like. It's not really. You're
Right.
kind of like all in, and
Yeah.
once you're in that world. And that was another thing that has been really challenging about designing solutions around AEM before, is that somebody say, hey, I want AEM, and you say, wait, you're going to take this big thing. I'm going to, it's like it's like you're all into this thing, and you're like, well, what if I don't want everything into this? Well, sorry, you're in, man.
Well, and that drives up costs too.
Drives up costs, and that's where so. Because previously for a big implementation, this is one of the things. So you have the pieces of doing an implementation is you've got purchasing it. A lot of people get hung up on the licensing, and I know as somebody who has to buy things, like when someone tells me a big licensing cost, I go, wow, that's really big. I'm not going to buy that. That's so expensive. But that's not even the big part of any one of these implementations. The license is expensive in a lot of these cases, but it's nothing compared to, well, what if you need an architect for a full year, or you need an architect in perpetuity, or you need an architect, but they're so expensive to get, and you train him up, and as soon as he's really trained, he jumps ship for something else, and now you got to train up another one. Now you're starting to talk about expensive. Added to the fact that how many developers do you need to get onto the platform, and then how many developers do you need to reliably just keep up with production support, and then add new features as somebody from marketing comes over and says, hey, wouldn't it be really nice if we could do the such and such? And it really is terrible when, as a company, you have to say, yeah, that'd be really cool, except for we don't have the consultant anymore, and you're just going to have to get in line. We have one developer and their backlog just fixing broken stuff.
And that's not even their expertise either.
So that makes
sense. You were mentioning earlier that the new AEM design reduces some of that requirement. It obviously doesn't eliminate the need for a knowledgeable, well-trained architect. But where my mind started going when you were talking earlier is like, if I'm a small business, if I'm in the C-suite of a small business, which I think goes up to $10 million, or a medium-sized business, and I'm thinking about scaling, what was once out of reach for the licensing and the architect and the long-term cost of AEM might actually be feasible now. Am I understanding that correctly? With the new improvements and making it more user-friendly.
I think that if you're a small business, AEM is still out of reach. I think it's still it still wouldn't make sense. If you look at the smallest possible implementation that you could do, it's still not. You're still probably going to be better served with something from Wix or something like that. But not necessarily WordPress with all that drama going on. That is just that's rough. It's really rough. I mean, I've got plenty of WordPress sites myself, and I'm sitting here right now thinking about how can I get off of them, because there's a lot of drama. There's a lot of drama and uncertainty, but the thing is for folks who are that next step up, medium-sized businesses, you're a national business, you've got, I mean, let's just say you're on like if you're comparing it to something like WordPress, if you're already paying for like WP Engine or WordPress VIP or something like that, you're already got a managed hosting contract, you already have lots and lots of custom plugins and so forth like that, and a lot of customizations, then you actually, whereas I wouldn't have said that you're a customer for AEM with this stuff, I would say that you're a customer, that you could really honestly consider that, because when you get that, and then you're really in the door of, because Adobe's got some super powerful other marketing stuff that you can leverage once you're on the stack. And and there's ways of, I mean, really the edit and deployment experience right now is so nice. I mean, we're finishing up an Edge Delivery, an AEM implementation right now, and it is such a breath of fresh air. It's like one of these things where I'm super proud of it at the end, because I know that I'm turning over something that the customer's really, really going to like, and they're going to like.
And that's the first instance of using document authoring, right?
Yeah. So that's
and Arbory is the first to do that.
It is actually. We I mean, our blog was first launched on it, but this will be one of the. I think this will be the first non-Adobe site that is launching on this. And I could talk about this a little bit. So document authoring is a new user interface, and basically it's kind of like it's a little bit difficult to put it all in a box and say it's one of these, because there's really not many other things like it. But it's a document user interface that's based in Edge Delivery, and it's for Edge Delivery sites, which is there for creating and managing all of the content that you have on an Edge Delivery site. It handles things like the back and forth to your asset management system. It handles rollout for translations, so that if you have multiple regional versions of your site or translated versions for your site, it handles the ingest, the compositing of all the things that you need to translate and roll out, sending it off to a translation provider and having it come back. So it does all this, and it is the fastest CMS I've ever worked on. It's very, very fast. I don't know of a faster one. I am not aware of a faster CMS. It's extremely fast. It's got real-time preview inside of it. It's got collaborative editing, so that you can go and have. I mean, we tried this. I was at a conference not too long ago, which is Adapt2 in Germany, and I gave a presentation at the conference, and as a part of that, I had the entire conference. There's 200 people in the conference. I said, "Good, why don't y'all log into this, and just you can edit at the same time." We'd never tried it. I wasn't sure if it was going to explode. The Adobe person who wrote the collaboration bit was in the room, probably, biting his nails, but totally held up. But yeah, so collaborative editing, real-time previews, got built-in versioning. So it's like super bulletproof. Like you could set anybody loose on this and say, I don't care, edit the homepage. I can revert it. Like it's pretty nice.
And that's where you were talking earlier that it's all done in recognizable platforms, right? Like Google Docs,
Yes.
Microsoft Word, SharePoint. So it's things that, non-technical people still know and are familiar with. So that's how you can say things like, hey, you non-technical person, go ahead and update the homepage.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's all tables and cells, and a lot of the structured data is in basically an Excel spreadsheet, and everybody knows how to do an Excel spreadsheet. So it's a very easy setup to learn, but the user interface and the interaction, like I said, is all also in just really commodity CSS and JavaScript. So we've taken people who've never touched this before. This is obviously their first implementation, so that you can't say I'm an experienced Edge developer, because there's nothing to be experienced in. There's something you've never seen before. So they, but within weeks, people were like, all right, I know my way around this. I'm making meaningful work. People were you get people instantly productive. So it's nice in that way. And then, but here's the big thing too, and this is the part that has kind of plagued me and been one of these things of like, where I want to do good work. I also want to, keep my family afloat and so forth. And you go, okay, good. You do a big job for a company, and you go, I know for a fact that after we leave, that you won't be able to keep this website up by yourself, and you're going to need to hire me again.
Yeah.
And whereas with Edge Delivery, we know that with a very limited set of local developers, that they'll be able to keep things going, and that's the part where I really enjoy what has been created. Now, I'll say this though, it doesn't take out the need for an architect, and because that's some of the bits that kind of have to be worked out, because a lot of this is not. It's still we're building the submarine while it's in the middle of a dive. So it's kind of there's a lot that's changing in this world right now, and so even so. But here, let me show you actually a bit about how this all fits together, because I think anybody listening or watching this could probably benefit from this. So this is an architecture diagram I've got of our basically a customer setup for running Edge Delivery with document authoring and how it might plug into an AEM setup. So this big gray bit in the middle here that you see, that is the document authoring setup. That is this what we call DA. That's where you do all of your authoring. That's where all the pages are kept. That's where all this versioning. That's where you can visualize what you're creating and then do your publishing and previewing and so forth, right? This red block here represents the entire stack of what Edge Delivery Services is. This is all the things that take these documents and sets of images and so forth, push them up, and then Edge Delivery Services takes care of making web optimized images and video, optimized styling and so forth, so that once this is pushed into the browser, it renders as fast as it possibly can.
And that's just so I'm understanding that part right. That's where if I'm using document authoring and I'm editing a web page in Google Docs, I select an image, I drop it in, and the Edge Delivery Service will automatically reformat that to fit an Android, an iPhone, a tablet, or a laptop.
Yeah, in the olden days,
That's
the way
amazing.
in the olden days, the way that you had to do this with AEM is that what you would do is you'd select an image, and let's just say your photographer just came back with an image, and it's 4,000 by 4,000 or whatever the size of this image is. It's a 16 megabyte JPEG or something, or a PDF or a Photoshop document. So you had to write a workflow in AEM which would say, okay, here's my website and here's all the different sizes that I need. I need one that's this big. I need a square one. I need a little tiny one for my thumbnail. I need a medium quality one, which is going to be the hero. It needs to load fast, but I need another higher quality one that will load afterwards. So you have to pre-think of all of this and then make them all rendered out.
Sounds tedious.
It is tedious. It is tedious. And it's one of these things too, is that you have to do it every time. And so you're like,
Oh, God.
So every time you make one of these sites, so there's some out of the box stuff, but still, it's work that you gotta do. This does almost the entirety of that automatically, and there's tweakable stuff that you can do with if you want to tweak how it's doing that, but for the most part, it's usable out of the box. We're using 99% out of the box. And it does all the optimizations where like, oh, load a itty bitty one, load a bigger one. It's doing all that behind the scenes anyway. So that part's really nice. And
That's pretty incredible.
And it's close to like physically close, like geographically close to the person's browser. So this is also something as an infrastructure guy, I spent most of my life as an infrastructure guy. You'd be having these conversations with a customer the first time. It's like, okay, good. Where are all your customers? Oh, you got some of them in England. Okay, good. You sure we don't want to make some servers in England or in Amsterdam so it's close to your, like, so we'd be physically deploying things like with people who are there making stuff, right? Blinking lights, plugging stuff in. Like, so that is now with the fact that, this CDN, that content distribution network, that's all a part of it. You get it for, as a part of the service where it's all pushing that out. That CDN also is configurable, does some really fancy stuff that I talked about on one of my bike riding podcasts. But you can use it as what fancy pants people like me would call an application proxy, where you can say, well, I want everything coming to Edge Delivery, except this, and this, which have to go to my old backend servers that are sitting in the basement on-prem at our HQ. And those aren't going to move. And, the CTO says they can't move. And so company.com/old stuff still has to go to old stuff in the basement.
So what are some of the reasons you would want to keep that in place? Like, I'm thinking compliance and data security.
There's just sometimes where it's just not even practical to move it. Like you might have, like, it might be just like, there's some ye old database that is like, let's say you have a company, a manufacturing company. You've got 50,000 SKUs of parts that you've got, and or you make paint sprayers or whatever. It's like you got all these parts that are 30 years old that you've got in some database that some guy wrote in 1985, and it's still there, and it's the only place where they all are, and it's a website that runs. Okay, great. How practical is it to move all that? I mean, it's going to be a real like, do you want to have to move that when you move your marketing site? You don't.
Right.
So you say, good. Well, can mypaintsprayers.com/old stuff, can it just go to the thing from 1985 and it just that's still in the basement and that's okay? And then the rest of everything is here. So that's what this allows you to, gives you the flexibility to do stuff like that.
Reduces clutter in your new system.
And also reduces requirements, because sometimes, and I've had this as an architect, where you're designing requirements about all around the most complicated use cases that are there. So you go all through the use case and say, what was all the stuff that your thing has to do? And you say, well, I'd love to move you to my fancy new thing, but I can't, because my fancy new thing, your old stuff doesn't fit in the fancy new thing. So we're going to have to use old thing. So if you do this, you can split it out. In this case, you can also use certain technologies for what they're really good at, which is, if you look over in the corner in the middle, they've got these Adobe logos on the right side. So those ones, if you got, so take a product like AEM as a cloud service. Assets is a really robust system that lets you do things like, so you've got agencies that come in every so often and design ads for you. You don't want to give them access to all your backend stuff. You just want them to drop the new ad that they created or the new creatives. Good. This allows you to do stuff like that. You've got furniture and you want to use the new Adobe Firefly stuff to throw in AI backgrounds. So if it's a gray piece of furniture, it has this color background. If it's a blue piece of furniture, it doesn't still have the gray background. It has this background or something like that. That's fancy pants new stuff that you can just do with this. You don't want to have make your CMS do that, which is previously what you had to do. Is you said, oh, I want this new CMS. I have to use the asset management system that comes along with it, or the other way around. I want this great asset management system. I guess I have to throw my stuff into this CMS that's way more expensive than I want. Now you compose the solution that works for you, which I think is, again, we're making stuff that people love to use, which is nice.
Yeah, that sounds pretty incredible.
But, and the rest of this too, this all just kind of goes into composing a complete system. Because again, like Adobe doesn't have their own translation system. That's not what they do. So you're going to pick one. And so in this case, you can pick something like SmartLink. SmartLink is a big global translation vendor. SmartLink is going to plug into all this just fine. Or you're just going to use Google Translate or something like that plugs into that and rolls it out. So anyway, in this case too, though, yes, there's still going to be licensing cost. AEM isn't free, and it's not cheap either. So but the thing is it's also, you don't, if you want best of breed, because nobody comes to their new technologies decisions and they're like, let me get, not the worst.
Right. Yeah, you get what you pay for.
It's true. I had an e-commerce business for a little bit, and so I made a couple trips to China as a part of this, and went to factories to go and see about getting people to make stuff for us, and always was like, we had this really groovy container thing with this crazy mechanism that opened and sealed it and stuff. I'm like, okay, except for it's a little expensive. Can you make it a little bit cheaper? And the guy at the factory is like, you don't ever ask that question, because we can absolutely make it cheaper, but you don't want us to honestly say that, because we'll make it cheaper.
You don't want to see what that'll look like.
Yeah, we'll make it cheaper. So that is the thing too with this, is that yeah, you can get a lower end system that does less things, doesn't integrate well, but in this case, this is really, it's really classy to work on. And so I'm excited for what this is going to bring.
Yeah, but it seems like Adobe has really pushed into a new field, new area where yes, you're going to pay for it, but it's going to be faster. You're going to provide a better customer experience. And internally to your company, if you run this, you're going to have a team that can use it better and faster and is easier to manage that in the long term, like you were saying, require a very specialized high dollar architect that stay on to make sure
In
your
perpetuity.
website
Yeah.
can keep running.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is that if you're an architect, you want to architect, you want to design. Like imagine if you had to have an architect full time for your house, right? Like no, they're supposed to design it and then leave. Like so it's very similar. You know, you want somebody to help you design this, and so to be fair, also this isn't a silver bullet. It's not
Right.
something that is
Nothing
for.
is.
It's not for everything. There are definitely use cases where it does not fit. And so this is
Sure.
something again where some architecture help, some back and forth and say, good, does this make sense? Does this do everything? Because there's going to be times where you say, well, we've got this use case where we've got this form thing that it does, and it needs to be able to you authenticate, and then it has to talk to this back end thing. And like, can your thing do that? And you want to be able to honestly say, yeah, it maybe could, but it wouldn't be good. So maybe that's something that you want to have on AEM. There's other cases
Or
too. Go ahead.
or have the wherewithal, like you were saying earlier, like, yeah, we can move most of your website to Edge Delivery, but the rest of this should probably stay either because it's outdated or it's better for compliance. Um, yeah, you need the expert architect to be able to identify that and bid that.
That's right. And there's some cases too where it still doesn't make sense. And there's some cases too where, for example, financial services is notorious for this in that you've got requirements for data residency where yes, it can be in the cloud as long as the cloud is in Switzerland. Like things, and those are just legitimate requirements that if you brought edge delivery to the table and you say, well, we want to put an edge delivery like that you can't guarantee that this will only be in one country when you design this. So that's not a thing. There are other really in-depth requirements around things like China. China is a underappreciated challenge that I don't think a lot of people understand how big that place is and how many people with money, with means, could buy your stuff that are in China that they don't do it because your website takes a minute to load.
Right.
And I don't think anybody really, I mean, I've done a few mainland China website optimization projects of getting the loading speed up to snuff. And before we started, the loading speed, it took a full minute to load a broken page.
Yeah, no one has the patience for that in 2024. No one's going to stick around for that.
No, I don't think I think the last time anybody had patience for that was 1994. So so there are things like that where it's not the silver bullet for the problem, and there's other things you need to
Right.
do. A lot of times too, when you have dynamic data, so we've been there's other solutions that need to be brought to bear for that. But for a lot of marketing sites, this is pretty exciting tech because there's a lot of times where we used AEM to solve a problem, and it really was like looking around. What do you got? I got a screw gun. Good. Everything we got screws then, and
Yeah.
but in this case we can break it apart. So if you have some things where you say, oh well, this document based thing is super great, but we've got really stringent governance requirements where we don't want people editing this, and this, and we want them only doing this, and this. This is one of these things where that might call for something that has a lot more knobs and buttons and levers and stuff like old school AEM, where you can say,
Yeah.
good, we're going to make something that does exactly that. And
Yep.
so again, doesn't do everything. It does a lot of stuff really well though.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, well, I have a much better understanding now. I appreciate all the explanation and I'm gaining and now have a full new appreciation for what it actually takes to make all the things we see on the internet run, and all the things that happen in the background, and all the design and data residency that it takes to really provide the best experience uh, that you can. It's a lot.
It is a bit, but it's fun. It's fun to be a part of that.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the podcast, Brandon. And I hope people got something out of this. You got something more that you want to learn about how this tech all works, or things that it may or may not be a right fit for, the right tool for the job. Then give us a ring.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I'll see you around the water cooler.
All right, good. See you guys.